Hello, my name is Teresita Blanco, the Artsy sister, and we're continuing with Saturnastra, Deasura. This is chapter 18. Even when they arrive, the place has a certain rustic feel to it, and no outsider seems willing to deal with the rough wilderness. And the eastern continent and the southern continent are about 17 months trip each. With today's seafaring technology, and even migratory dragons do not seem too inclined to bother with its location, and as such they are only native here to the north and the deep seas of the ring continent. Month 8, day 7, year 6. So they arrived at the port of Damas in the port town of Melo, and it is one of the many little city ports plaguing the Sea Dragon archipelagos, and this one is closer to the largest island, and the port gets its name from its prime export, Damas fabrics. They also sell damas or wood steel, so perhaps it gets its name from there. And the port town is just like any other port town in this continent, and I have seen so many of them, so they're starting to run together in my head. And the docks include the shipyards, the woodcutters, and the smithies, and in the center of town is a fish market with its distinct rotting flesh smell. And its prime location allowed for the infestation of every person and building in town. And it was worse when the port town had flower markets as well, and both smells combined to form the unholy union akin to a funeral home. And just passing by those places is enough to make one's stomach turn. And it is in one of these bars at the flower market where I'm going to meet my new crew. And my current part is just to stay in the harbor since the scent of the pungent stagnant water was at least tolerable. And the bar itself wasn't nauseating as all the other bars I had the great misfortune to visit. I took a last breath of fresh air and then entered within. And whenever I entered one of those enclosed, musky locations, people could not help but notice me. And it had something to do with the changing temperature, the cool aura that followed me wherever I went. My attire tools were cause for consternation, and at the time I was going through a custom sort of phase, custom in the sense that I was wearing a variety of different attires, which fell within the allotted timeline. And I never got why the day preferences, and I thought that wearing jeans would have been so revolutionary. Though I do see the need of not arousing too much suspicion from the unseen enemies, and I cannot help but feel like my cover was just blown half a decade ago. And truly, it is quite a short not standing out. Then again, in the magic world, it is not too hard. I'm just another weirdo in a continent filled with weirdos, and since I was meeting the truth for the first time, I wanted to cause a good impression so I would not have to rely on sandals to maintain order in my ranks. And I wore a flat office dress with the shoulders exposed, and the long sleeves by the elbow had a golden button every so often. And it was tied from the top to the waist, and then it came loose from the down. And I wore a golden ring on the index finger, and as well as a veil. And on top of it there was a round golden crown with 4 spikes and a pair of strings connected each spikes. And Calico had often described me to his superiors as being larger than life. And it made sense seeing as though in spite of my small stature, those drunken faces kept staring at me. As with most bars, all official business took place in the second floor, which overlooked the counter and the dance room, game room, or whatever in the first floor. And a grimace as I got up halfway up the stairs, and waiting for me was Mary Ann. And I asked, "What are you doing here?" "You know why, and stop asking stupid questions. Now come here and meet the other," she said, gesturing to me. And I saw Amanda go 20 or so maidens, Bonnie Reed, and the other lady pirate within Calico's group. And once I got to meet everyone, I heard about the other people from my future crew. And I realized the Navy's intention. They had gathered all the problematic women under one vessel for easier management. And due to their connections to the Navy, the Navy could not just be rid of them in the traditional sense. And by transferring them to illustrious ranks of the corsairs, they could keep their families happy and not deal with them on a day-to-day basis. And as for Mary Ann and Bonnie Reed, well, they were tasked with keeping an eye on me and misinforming the main line of my activities. It was only now that all of the ladies had gathered together that they realized that all the women from the Navy had been relegated to corsairs, and it was believed that having women on board a ship was bad luck. And the corsairs did not ascribe to such superstition, nor did the fishermen who primordially worshipped the goddess Erua. Superstitions aside, the Navy captains found it much easier to manage a male-only ship than a ship with a small minority of women cadets. And in the face of the usual questioning, I jumped out the second-floor balcony into the dance floor, and the way I had quietly gotten up and jumped down startled my interlocutor. as well as the people down below. And the only two people not to be surprised were Mary and Bonnie. And Mary Ann formerly belonged to one of the unincorporated tribes of the Berserkers. And they kept tacit ties with Armageddon as well as a non-aggression pact among their operatives. And from time to time they would send emissaries to live and integrate, and Mary was one of such people that had been forced to integrate. As for Bonnie, she had been scarred by one of her lovers, and as such had been unable to continue working as a courtesan, and most men found creepy her blue left eye and the 3-line scratches on her cheek. And there were other decorated scars all over her body forming the words and symbols, and she could have had them healed but chose not to, and the drunkards gathered around me to see if I was alive. And I slowly got up and turned around to gaze back at my shipmate. And they seemed at odds as to what to make of me, and there was one girl for certain in all their minds, and it was that I was crazed and more durable than the average lunatic. I left the bar and made my way towards the harbor, and I was soon accompanied by my crew, and it was customary for the new captain to drink with their new mates. And since I made it clear that I was not going to play Sue and that I didn't like drinking, my new girls started to follow behind. And some found it refreshing to get out to work right away, and others regretted not getting drunk while they had the chance. And it was a commonality to drink large quantities of ale before embarking on any strenuous work. And my new ship was to be another boring galleon, and this one required a crew of 150, so the size was just about average. And with the addition of the new girls, I had about 60 folks to work with, and the rest were supposed to be acquired via apprenticeship, hiring, or buying. All in all, I needed carpenters and caulkers, and Sasha and Yuta would also function as divers should the need arise. And there were also the sailors, the apprentices who assisted the sailors and did the cooking and cleaning. And I also needed to find gunners and powder monkey, and the rest were normally made up of pages and ship pages. And when I arrived, Sasha and Yuta were busy tearing up the ship to bits, doing necessary upgrades and downgrades where the need was required. And I dispersed the girls to fill out their former posts, except for those stations already taken by my crew, and Rhoda's and Tibia's were moved their seats to the master quarters, and Jim was in the midst of throwing away most of his rotten food. And he was about to throw an ominous-looking, smelly satchel overboard when he saw me arrive. And he stopped and then went about to dispose of it properly in the way I had taught him, and he drew a circle with a shock with some symbols as well, and a light flash, and then the dirty beads were summoned elsewhere, and the diagram was gone too, so it was always a hassle for dear old Jean to keep drawing the circle over and over. And below the deck, Gillian was fighting a rat infestation, and there were more rats in the ship than in the dungeons he had been forced to inhabit since his arrest. And Liz was in the top castle taking a nap, and it was the only place where he could find to get away from the horrible smell and the rat infestation. And the twins had downgraded from 20 guns to 8, with 4 on each side, and it was necessary amount to cover all sides when the mages were out of commission. And we would supplement the missing guns with stronger firepower and increased accuracy. And by just removing the guns, our crew size was reduced to by 27, and each gun normally required 2 to 3 people to function. And since Leaf and I were surgeons or whatever, I was able to spare the addition of 6 medic. And even with these minor changes, I was still short of 60 or so people. Alright, that's the end of this chapter. The building of the crew. Bye bye and God bless.